Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Let's go. The AC podcast on Christmas week. A lot in the NFL happened. The Jets got their first win. The Steelers stunk it up. We had a premier matchup with the Chiefs and the Saints. The Bills are looking like the biggest threat to Kansas City. Oh, man. And there's an exciting matchup between Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts Sunday. So there's a lot to get into. As far as football is concerned, I'm excited to talk about a lot today. So we got all the playoff teams on the docket. Of course, I'm going to do a deep dive into my Steelers, talk about these playoff teams and what the outlook is looking like for them going forward. Then I'm going to get to my thoughts about this Jalen Hurts performance and how Howie Roseman has bamboozled the Eagles fan base and media. National media, of course, not the Philadelphia media. He can't fool them. But getting to that, and then I got a fan question about Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. So we got a lot to get into. But let's just start with this. Let's start with my Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, it was one of those nights, man. It was one of those nights. Hard to watch, as usual. It's been a tough month for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's for sure. Steelers lost to the Bengals, the 2-10-1 Bengals at the time. Lost to them 27-17 on Monday Night Football last night. Let me just start with the offense. I don't even really need to talk about the defense. I don't hold them accountable for this game or even last game against the Buffalo Bills. I don't hold the defense accountable. It's not their fault for any of this. They're being hung out to dry as far as I'm concerned. They come ready to play. But this offense, it is terrible. And first, let me give some credit to Randy Fichtner, the offensive coordinator. I know I haven't done it much on this podcast. He still deserves to be fired. There's no doubt about that. He still deserves to be fired. Let me make that very clear. But yesterday, he called a good game in the first quarter, and Ben Roethlisberger just couldn't make the throws necessary. Had an easy throw, a crossing route to Deontay Johnson, missed it. Caught the Bengals playing cover one. Von Bell lurks underneath coverage. And Claypool pops open wide over the middle of the field. Fumble by Juju Smith-Schuster because Ben Roethlisberger decides to check it down on a third down. You got James Washington on the first play of the game deep. Ben Roethlisberger underthrows it. Ben throwing in quadruple coverage or triple coverage with Eric Ebron, threw him a hospital ball, got him knocked out for the rest of the game. Chase Claypool pops wide open on a post route. If he would have thrown it to Chase Claypool, it would have been a touchdown. So Ben, he was just off all night. The whole Steelers offense in the first half, 3 turnovers. What more can you say? Ben Roethlisberger in the first half, 7-16. Threw for 7 yards, an interception, fumbled a snap an exchange between him and Marquise Pouncey. Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on the logo and got popped by Von Bell, fumbled the ball. Your two veteran leaders on the team, as far as the skills position and the quarterback, both had key turnovers in the game. Steelers ran 29 plays and averaged 1.4 yards per play, had 2 first downs and 40 yards in the first half. That's just pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic. Didn't convert a third down. And this is the 4th straight game the Steelers have scored less than 20 points. Then you're talking about 4 of the last 5 games, going all the way back to the Jacksonville game. They haven't scored in the first quarter. So they haven't scored in the first quarter against Jacksonville. They didn't score in the first quarter against Washington. They didn't score in the first quarter against Buffalo, and they didn't score in the first quarter last night against the Cincinnati Bengals. That is how pathetic the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now. So you just look at all that stuff, and then you look at the running game. Benny Snell, he was admirable with his 84 yards on 18 carries. But it didn't move me, really. Then you look at the other people who ran the ball. Chase Claypool, -6 yards. Jalen Samuels, why is he even on the roster? And then Anthony McFarland only gets 1 carry. I just don't get the use of personnel. It just really confuses me. The receivers, they were hung out to dry. Ben Roethlisberger just couldn't get them the ball all night. And then you look at, this just really boggles my mind that the Steelers don't scheme up more targets for Chase Claypool. It just boggles my mind. The guy is 6'4" and runs a 4.4 40. What excuse could you possibly have not to get this guy the football when he's your most dominant receiver? Deontay Johnson is your best receiver. But Chase Claypool, as we saw yesterday, on a 37-yard scamper down the sideline on a screen pass, is your most explosive threat. And you're not getting him the football. James Washington, he's nice, but he's the 4th receiver for a reason. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's basically like a running back. They throw him everything short or behind the line of scrimmage. The Steelers just clearly don't know how to use Juju Smith-Schuster effectively. And let me get to Juju and these TikTok dances and that whole thing, because this is, me personally, I don't care about the TikTok dances. The Steelers have more problems than Juju doing TikTok dances. But here's all I will say about that. Number one, you're giving the other team motivation by dancing on their logo before the game starts. Number two, you're putting a target on your own back, and you're not even producing that much. Number three, you are losing games. So, you want to market yourself. That's all fine and dandy. You're not being a locker room malcontent like Antonio Brown was and being a diva. And you're not complaining about targets, sure. But Juju Smith-Schuster is the most accomplished wide receiver in this locker room. And you're supposed to be a leader. And right now, you should be focused on winning games, not doing TikTok dances on opposing teams' logos, because the other guys are watching you. This is the youngest wide receiving room in the league. Like, dude, you gotta set a better example. You gotta be a leader. That's not what leaders do. What you should be doing is like, all right, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna set a precedent for my team, and I'm gonna go out here and set the tone and start winning football games. Let me demand the ball and make some plays for this football team. Because Juju, you're not even you're the 3rd best receiver on this team. Chase Claypool is better than you. Deontay Johnson is better than you. But you're the most accomplished guy in this room, and you need to start setting the tone and start being a leader and stop dancing on people's logos, because you're losing games. You're on a 3-game losing streak. And that's really what it comes down to for me. The defense is being hung out to dry. While the offensive coordinator made adjustments last night, I'm just not enamored by his play calling overall. He's a QB coach, but I don't even really know if he does that really well. Because if he's a QB coach, why is Ben Roethlisberger looking bad down the stretch in December? And Mason Rudolph, he's not good. So I don't even know what you're teaching him as far as QB development. So don't even get me started on Randy Fichtner as the QB coach, who's an offensive coordinator who has no idea how to call plays, no idea how to get in a rhythm as far as calling plays. There's a little stretch in the 3rd quarter where the Steelers scored 10 straight points, but it wasn't nearly enough. They got the ball back after the Steelers defense stopped the Cincinnati Bengals on 3 straight possessions, and you didn't do anything with the next. You should have scored on the 3rd offensive possession that you had in the quarter, but you didn't. And then the defense, the only bad thing I can say about the defense really is that they gave up that long touchdown drive, the 9-play, 80-yard drive to Ryan Finley, where he ran in from 23 yards. But the Steelers obviously weren't prepared for his legs. Clearly, that's just pretty obvious, because they were crashing down on every single read option that they ran, and Ryan Finley was gashing them. But the defense did give the Steelers a chance to win this game. They didn't force any turnovers. That's fine. But when it comes down to it, the defense has been hung out to dry. Yeah, you can say, the Steelers gave up 27 points. Well, all those points came, the 17 points that the Bengals scored in the first half were a direct result of 3 turnovers in Steelers territory. A fumble, 20 to 25 yards away from the end zone. An interception thrown near the logo, but it was returned about 20 to 25 yards. And then one of the offensive linemen decided he wanted to be a bonehead and hit the dude way after he was out of bounds. So then you get 15-yard personal foul penalty that puts the Bengals 20 to 25 yards away from the away from the goal line. And then the fumble by Juju Smith-Schuster that put the Bengals 20 to 25 yards away from the goal line. So you continuously put your defense in bad spots. You can't always expect them to bail you out. I'm sorry. The reason other people can blame the defense if they want to for not stopping the Bengals, I personally don't. Any good defense can get got in today's league, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it's Ryan Finley, and I'm not making concessions for the defense. But if I'm looking at this game, the defense was not the problem. The Bengals only had one legit offensive drive that they went the length of the field, and that was the Ryan Finley touchdown run where they went 9 plays, 80 yards. So as far as I'm concerned, the defense is the least of my problems. The offense, I just don't get it. You have playmakers everywhere. Ben Roethlisberger has a multitude of weapons. You don't have a running game, but this passing game should be more expansive. You have receivers that can attack all 3 levels of the defense. I've been saying it. Deontay Johnson can attack all 3 levels of the defense. He caught that deep touchdown pass, obviously, from Ben Roethlisberger, his only touchdown of the game. Juju Smith-Schuster can get you short and intermediate throws. Chase Claypool, while he's not a polished and developed route runner, he can attack all 3 levels of the defense, but they don't scheme him open enough touches, number one. And number two, he's not on the field enough. I don't know what the Steelers are doing or what they're thinking, but they're wasting meaningful snaps if they're running empty and they're trotting out James Washington or even Jalen Samuels. And Benny Snell, he's an okay back. He's okay. He's nothing to write home about. The Steelers have an average running game. They have no special dudes in their backfield. James Conner is an average back. Give me a break. But when you just look at this stuff, I don't trust this team. I don't trust this team. I trust the defense, but Mike Tomlin, I don't regret saying it. Years ago, I was saying the Steelers should have fired Mike Tomlin. Now, I retracted the statement and apologized last season on the AC podcast because of what he did with Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph. But let's just keep this all the way clear. Mike Tomlin is 3-5 since appearing in his last Super Bowl a decade ago. The 5 playoff wins that he accrued were in his first 3 years coaching. Mike Tomlin's been the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 14 years. Let's just keep this all the way clear, guys. Mike Tomlin's been the coach for 14 years. He's 8-7 in the playoffs. 8-7. His first year in 2007, 0 playoff wins. He went 10-6. 2008, he won the Super Bowl, 3 playoff victories. 2009, didn't even make the playoffs, 9-7. Then 2010, 2 playoff victories, you lost in the Super Bowl. So there's your 5 playoff wins. And then you went 3 years without winning a single playoff game. No, you went 4 years without winning a playoff game from 2011 to 2014. 2015, you won 1 playoff game. That was against A.J. McCarron. Big whoop-de-doo. You almost lost that game. You should have lost that game if we're being honest. Then, 2016, you won 2 playoff games. Who were they against? Matt Moore of the Miami Dolphins because Ryan Tannehill got hurt. And then Alex Smith, who you had to kick 6 field goals against. You didn't even score an offensive touchdown. But let's go to your 5 playoff losses in that same time span. And this is not to indict Mike Tomlin, but everyone says, oh, he has the second most wins. He has the second most wins other than Bill Belichick since such and such date. Well, guess what? Bill Belichick's winning playoff games. Mike Tomlin's not. 3-5 since 2010? That's not success in the playoffs. Mike Tomlin's a good regular season head coach, and I'm not advocating for Mike Tomlin to be fired. I want to make that very clear. I'm just saying Mike Tomlin, his playoff resume is not that impressive. It's not. Over this decade, 3-5, and you're one of the top tier head coaches? That's not acceptable. Let's talk about your 5 playoff losses because we talked about your 3 playoff wins since 2010. Let's talk. You beat A.J. McCarron, Matt Moore, and Alex Smith on 6 field goals. You couldn't even score an offensive touchdown. But your 5 playoff losses, one was to Tim Tebow. We need not even discuss that any further. The other one was to Peyton Manning on a bum arm Another one was to Joe Flacco. Another one was to Tom Brady, where you got stomped in the AFC Championship game in 2016. And then the last one was to Blake Bortles, who your defense was seen giving up 45 points to after he scored 9 the previous week against the Buffalo Bills. And Mike Tomlin's supposed to be a defensive mind. And this is my other problem with Mike Tomlin. It took you almost a decade to field a competent defense. You inherited a great defense from Bill Cowher. Now, you won the Super Bowl. I give you credit for that. But Mike Tomlin has a defensive background. He was a defensive backs coach, and he was a defensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they won the Super Bowl. So he knows what a good defense looks like. And it took him almost a decade to build a competent defense. Almost a decade. What? It took you having 9 first rounders on the defense to field a good defense? Because for years, the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't had good defense for years. Yes, they've led the league in sacks the last few years, but it wasn't until 2019 when the Steelers had to get Minkah Fitzpatrick and Devin Bush for this defense to actually look good. It took you having Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, Tyson Alulu's a former first-round pick. Mark Barron's a former first-round pick. You needed Joe Hayden, Terrell Edmonds, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Devin Bush. That's 9 first-rounders. And the only dude who's not on the defense anymore is Mark Barron. So it took you having that many first-rounders on defense to field a competent defense? And you're a defensive mind? This is what I mean when Mike Tomlin doesn't wow me with his schematics. He's a good motivator. But what is motivation doing right now? Because if the Steelers were motivated, they wouldn't be coming out flat in these first quarters. 4 of the last 5 games, you're not scoring a point? That's coaching. That's preparation. That's Mike T. You're 0-3 in December, Mike T. You've lost to Washington, Buffalo, and now the Cincinnati Bengals. 2 of those teams have losing records. This team's unprepared. This offense, it's pathetic. I'm sorry, but this falls on Mike T as the head coach. No slight to him, but I just got to call it like I see it. And the coordinators that you have employed, they're incompetent. Randy Fichtner, he's an incompetent offensive coordinator. If the Steelers decide to Ben Roethlisberger is going to be back next year, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But if the Steelers are bringing back Ben Roethlisberger next year, they can't bring back Randy Fichtner. Are you kidding me? You can't bring back this abomination. This guy's not qualified to be an offensive coordinator. He makes too many numbskull, boneheaded decisions. He doesn't know how to call a game. And you have too much offensive weaponry to be struggling, scoring less than 20 points 4 straight games. Do you know what some other offensive coordinators could do with this offensive firepower? And Ben Roethlisberger? Come on now, man. This is unacceptable. Mike Tomlin has control over his coaching staff. But if you're going to continue to employ ineptitude, that falls on you. That falls on you, and that falls on you, and you're culpable for that, as far as I'm concerned. That's why I said last week, Mike Tomlin is an average head coach, not because he's average, but because the offensive and defensive coordinators are average dudes to me. Yes, that means the defensive coordinator as well, because he was on coordinating the defense the last 4 or 5, 6 years, and the defense was below average. No offense. But just like I said, it took Mike Tomlin 9 years to field a competent defense. It took the same thing for the defensive coordinator. If you're a good defensive coordinator, you shouldn't need 9 of your 11 guys on the defense to be first rounders to field a competent defense. That's ludicrous. That doesn't make sense to me. Yes, you want to have talent on defense, but you shouldn't need 95% of the defense to be first rounders, elite level guys to field a competent defense? No, bro. No, give me a break. Give me a break. As far as I'm concerned, the defensive coordinator should be handing his game checks to Minkah Fitzpatrick, because he's the one who saved the entire defense last year. Without that trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, the Steelers' defense would not be nearly as good, because they were averaging giving up 30 prior to the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. They had given up over 30 to the Patriots, and they had given up over 30 to Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. So don't even get me started on that. But like I said, I'm not saying Mike Tomlin's overrated. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, but I still feel the way I felt back then. I retracted the statement, but from 2017, oh yeah, I still feel Mike Tomlin should have been fired. Now I'm glad the Steelers didn't fire him, And I'm grateful that he's the head coach. And yeah, maybe I'm talking out both sides of my mouth on this particular topic. But I don't think I'm crazy when I'm saying Mike Tomlin. I'm just not enamored by what I'm seeing right now. Your team is unprepared. You're 3-5 since 2010 in the playoffs. Now you can make the argument. There's some other coaches like John Harbaugh and Sean Payton who've had down years as well and haven't had as much playoff success. So I get that. Like I said, I'm not advocating for Mike Tomlin to be fired. But there's a legit argument that he should have been fired, at least in my opinion, before last year in 2017. There is definitely a legit argument. But like I said, I'm glad the Steelers kept him. But Mike Tomlin has to do right by the Steelers organization, by the Steelers fan base, and he's got to get rid of Randy Fichtner at the very least because he's wasting away what's supposed to be a Super Bowl window, quote unquote, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't trust this guy. He should not be the coordinator for the offense. If you're struggling to score and you have Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Eric Ebron, Vance McDonald, if you're struggling with those weapons to score, we have a problem. And this is a passing league. And Ben Roethlisberger, he's 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, or 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a 3-to-1 touchdown and a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. If you're struggling with that type of production, we have a problem. We have a serious problem. But the Steelers, as far as their offseason needs, I'm sorry. Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know whether his arm is dissipating as the season's waning because he's thrown so much in the previous 14 weeks, but his arm just doesn't look nearly the same. His arm looked fine in the first 13 weeks. Now it looks like it's starting to dissipate a little bit. Now, I'm not going to make any speculation on whether I think he's injured or not, but something is clearly up because the arm strength, it doesn't look nearly the same as it did the first 13 weeks. And the Steelers can't run the ball. So as far as offseason needs, the Steelers need to be looking up at trading up for one of these quarterbacks. I'm not even kidding. The Steelers need to, because Ben Roethlisberger has a $41 million cap hit next year. You cannot extend him past 2021. You can't do it. You just got to bite the bullet on that $41 million for next season. You just got to bite the bullet, play Ben Roethlisberger. If he's playing like trash, then you have a quarterback. But Mason Rudolph, he's not the answer. He is buns. And Josh Dobbs, he's just a backup. So the Steelers, they had to trade up for one of these quarterbacks. You're not going to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, but if you can mortgage the future and get Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, one of those two dudes, I'm cool with that. I don't care what you got to do to get up in that top 10 to get Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, or maybe even Justin Fields slides after his performance against Northwestern. You could even trip and get him because I'm looking at this. He'll have the youngest receivers in the league. He'll have the youngest wide receiving core in the league, and these dudes are good. And you pair him with a good head coach like Mike Tomlin, a new offensive coordinator that's not Randy Fichtner. The Steelers will be right back in business in 2021 or 2022, depending on how good the quarterback is. So I think that's what the Steelers should do. Their other biggest need is a running back. I'm not going to be mad if they draft a running back in the first round. But if I were the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'd be trying to trade up. I'd be scouting these quarterbacks, mainly Trey Lance and Zach Wilson, and I'd be trying to trade up into that top 10, top 15 range to get one of those dudes. That's what I would be doing. Because Ben Roethlisberger, if he's not done now, he's definitely going to be done next season. There's no way. And the Steelers have no succession plan right now. And this is a quarterback deep draft. If you need a quarterback, you better get one now. Just like the Green Bay Packers did last year when they got Jordan Love to replace Aaron Rodgers at some point. You need to get Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, one of these dudes up in here, to supplant once Ben Roethlisberger's gone. That's my opinion on what they should do. I doubt they will do it. But, hey, I'm giving the Steelers the blueprint to continue having longevity as far as success. You put the quarterback in an environment like this with a good head coach. Offensive line is a little aging, but they're still good in pass protection for the most part. These receivers, they're good. All he'd need is a running back, but you can get a running back in any round. You don't have to get a first round running back. You get a running back in any round in the NFL draft. So, there's that. But moving on, because I've talked about the Steelers ad nauseum. Chiefs are the number 1 seed. Looks like all but surely they're going to get the number 1 seed in the AFC. People are getting on the Chiefs because they've had 6 straight one-possession games. I'm not concerned about the Chiefs. If that's what people are concerned about, they're concerned about the wrong thing. Only thing I'd be concerned about as far as the Kansas City Chiefs, like I said, is their defense. Now, they're rounding into form. However, it's going to take a lot to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It just is. The Chiefs' worst game of the season this year was, or Patrick Mahomes' worst game, rather, was against the Miami Dolphins where he threw 3 interceptions. And they still won that game and scored 30 straight points. Like, well, what are you going to do with that? You got 3 turnovers off Patrick Mahomes, and they got a fumble from Mecole Hardman. So the Dolphins got 3 extra possessions, and they still lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know how you beat the Chiefs. I legit don't. I think they are virtually unbeatable. If you can't beat them when you get 3 extra possessions off of them, you get 3 interceptions off Patrick Mahomes, now how are you going to beat this team? How are you going to beat this team? I have no idea. But the one team I do think, and the biggest threat I do think to the Kansas City Chiefs, the only threat really I think to the Kansas City Chiefs is the Buffalo Bills. And I'll tell you why. The Bills are averaging 28 points per game. They just put up over 40 on the Denver Broncos, who are a sneaky underrated defense. You look at the Buffalo Bills, they're one of the top teams in time of possession. Yards per play, they average 6 yards per play. Over 375 yards per game, that's the top 10. And when you look at the losses in Patrick Mahomes' career, the 9 losses, this guy is just something special. When you look at the 9 losses in Patrick Mahomes' career, he's averaged putting up 31 points per game in the losses. So you're going to have to score at least 30 to 35 points to beat Patrick Mahomes, even if he does lose. That's the way I see it. And I think the Buffalo Bills are the only team that could do it. The Chiefs know the only way they can be beat is if you keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. So the Chiefs are willing to let you throw it on them, as far as I'm concerned. Their secondary, it's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world. But when you look at the Buffalo Bills, they can throw it all over you. The Chiefs don't have anyone that can cover Stephon Diggs. John Brown can stretch the field. Cole Beasley's uncoverable in the slot. Devin Singletary can do some things in the running game, even though the Buffalo Bills are like 22nd in the league in rushing. But the Buffalo Bills, as far as time of possession, they're tops in the league. They're a top 10 time of possession team. So that's how you keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. And the other thing the Buffalo Bills can do is they can create explosive plays. They rank 3rd in explosive plays, only behind the Chiefs and the Packers. So that's the formula right there. Sure, the Raiders, they're a team that can beat the Chiefs, but they're most likely not going to get into the playoffs. And they kind of put out the blueprint as far as running the ball and then hitting deep passing plays or chunk plays. While the Bills can't run the ball nearly effectively, they can pass the heck out of it, and they can control time of possession with that. And their defense is rounding into form in late December as well. So the Buffalo Bills, I think they're the biggest threat. The Steelers, they don't have the offense. They have the offensive personnel, but they don't have the offensive coordinator and the coaching. I don't trust the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's that. The Titans, if you stop Derrick Henry, you stop the Titans. So I just believe the Chiefs will do that, just like they did last year in the playoffs. So I don't trust the Titans either. The Colts, I don't trust Phillip Rivers. They're a nice team. Sure, they have a defense, but eventually Mahomes will figure you out even if you have an elite defense. So the Colts, I don't think they could put up enough points. The Dolphins, they're too inexperienced. Mahomes dropped 30 straight on them. And then the Browns, I don't trust Baker. I'm sorry. And like I said, the Chiefs know the only way the teams like the Browns, the Colts, and the Titans are going to be able to beat them is if they pound the ball. And most likely you're going to want Tannehill, Phillip Rivers, and Baker Mayfield to throw the ball and beat you. So they're most likely to load the box against those types of teams and make you beat them through the air. And I just don't think those teams can do it. I just don't think Tannehill, Phillip Rivers, or Baker Mayfield can beat you throwing the ball from the pocket. I'm just not sold on it. So when I look at that, the only legit threat to me is the Bills. I don't trust the Steelers offense to get on track, especially in these last 2 weeks against the Colts and the Browns. Steelers could end this season on a 5-game losing streak, so there's that. But that's not to knock any of these other teams. They have a puncher's chance. I just think the Bills have the best chance. I think they're the biggest threat. Then after that, it'd be a toss-up between the Colts and the Browns. The Titans, to me, they just don't wow me. I'm sorry. They just don't. Derrick Henry, he's a monster. Hulk Henry, King Henry, whatever nickname you want to give this man. He's a grown man. You do not want to see him in the paint. That's all I know. At the point of attack, you do not want to see that man. But I just don't think I'm just not a big believer in the Titans. That's just me. And then their third down defense is the worst in the league. So give me a break with the Titans. Give me a break on defense. Transitioning to the NFC. The Packers. We are going to learn a lot about the Packers this weekend. We're going to learn a lot. This is going to tell me whether the Packers are legit or not. Well, they're already legit, but this is going to tell me whether they're going to get punked in the playoffs by a team like the Rams. They play the Tennessee Titans this week. And like I've been saying all year, the Titans are a finesse team. The Packers are a finesse team. You can run on them, and if your defense is physical enough, you can get after Aaron Rodgers. Now, the Titans don't have a physical defense, so Aaron Rodgers should be able to throw all over them. But this Packers defense against Derrick Henry, that's the matchup I want to see. I want to see if the Packers defense is going to get punked like they did against the San Francisco 49ers 2 times last year, like they did against not against the Colts, like they did against the Bucks this year, and the Colts to a lesser degree this year as well. Those are the matchups I want to see. If the Packers can bottle up Derrick Henry, they should be able to win this game. Because the Packers are a top offense in the league, as far as I'm concerned. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see. I want to see if the Packers are truly have some grit in the trenches in their front seven. Because I know their secondary can cover with Kevin King, Jair Alexander, Darnell Savage, and Adrian Amos. I know those boys, they can cover. I know what they can do. But I want to see what this front seven can do. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. That's going to be the telltale matchup for me as far as the Green Bay Packers to see if they can win a Super Bowl. Then you get to the second seed, the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees. The Saints look like a one-and-done team to me. I'm just being honest. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. The more I watch them, the more I'm just not impressed. I saw that loss to the Eagles. It just didn't move me. It was very, very disappointing. Then you look at and Taysom Hill, don't even get me started. He's not a starting quarterback, so don't even get me started on that. That's a joke. Then you look at Drew Brees, very unimpressive. They almost won the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, but they didn't. Michael Thomas, he's injured. It just looks like it's not meant to be for the New Orleans Saints. That's just what it looks like to me. If you're telling me Drew Brees is going to look better down the stretch and in these last 2 games, and Michael Thomas is by some miracle going to come back in 3 weeks, I think we're kidding ourselves. I think we're kidding ourselves with that expectation. We've seen Drew Brees wane down the stretch just like last year and lose to Kirk Cousins in the first round and not even look like the best quarterback on his own team. What am I to expect this year? What am I to expect this year from the New Orleans Saints? I don't know. Their defense looks good. This guy, Trey Hendrickson, he's a monster. This guy, he's a grown man. He was eating up Eric Fisher all day in the Kansas City Chiefs game. He straight up punked him. But I just don't know about the Saints offense. They look very limited to me. And Drew Brees, his arm, it looks very, very limited. Very, very susceptible. That's all I'm saying. So there's that. Getting to the Seahawks, my reservations about them remain the same. Their defense, it's rounding into form. It looks decent. It looks okay. But I'm just not sold. I have to see them against some quality playoff competition, not the Washington football team. You know, the Seahawks, they just don't move me either as far as their defense is concerned. I have to see them against a quality team. Now, they get to play the Rams down the stretch. So if they can bottle them up, I might be a little impressed. I might be. I just might be a little impressed. But if not, then I stand where I stand. The Washington football team, meh. They don't move me. Nobody in the NFC East moves me. They're not real contenders as far as I'm concerned. So we need not even talk about them. I'm sorry for I'm sorry for you Washington fans if you're listening, but there's not really much to discuss. You're a team that has a good defense, but a limited, relatively pedestrian offense. It just is what it is. You don't have a quarterback. You probably should draft one this year. Trade up and try to get one because, you're going to waste this defense's prime if you don't get a quarterback and some receivers. So there's that. Rams, obviously they're the team that lost to the Jets, gave them their first win of the season. Oh, man, I got to talk about this from the Jets' perspective in a minute. But my biggest concern with the Rams is Jared Goff. I've been saying it. On any given Sunday, he can look like the worst quarterback in the NFL. The worst. And it showed. It showed on Sunday when they lost to the Jets. And I know Jets fans were upset because they lost control of the number one overall pick due to strength of schedule, even though they had the same record as the Jacksonville Jaguars. Strength of schedule, since they beat the 9-4 Rams. Since they beat the 9-4 Rams, the Jaguars have a lesser strength of schedule. So now the Jaguars are in sole possession of the number one pick with 2 games left, and Trevor Lawrence might slip through the Jets' fingers. The one thing they were trying to do, they couldn't even do that right. They couldn't even lose correctly. That's just hilarious to me. It's hilarious. I know Jets fans, they're sick to their stomach because Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent at the quarterback position. They're calling him the best thing since Andrew Luck as far as a quarterback prospect, and you're going to miss on him. You got people on national TV saying scouts are saying he would have been the number one overall pick as a freshman or straight out of high school. Oh man, the Jets might be set back another 10 years because of that, because of a win against the Rams. That's hilarious to me. It's just hilarious. When you're looking at the Rams, it's all about Jared Goff. They have weapons everywhere. They have a defense. They got a pass rush. They got a secondary who can take you apart. They got a head coach in Sean McVay. It really comes down to Jared Goff. And I think the Rams are the wild card in the NFC. Because to me, they have the best defense in the NFC. Yeah, the Saints, they're not. Look, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are the best of their positions. Marshawn Lattimore, he's good. Cameron Jordan, he's good. But they ain't Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. Let's just keep that clear. They ain't them two. And then you look at the rest of the Rams defense, very multiple, very versatile. I like their defense. I think they're better than the New Orleans Saints defense. That's just my opinion. If someone else has a different opinion, I'm not going to knock you for it. But the thing I'm worried about with the Rams is Jared Goff. If he plays good, I think they can beat the Packers because I think they can muscle them up. And I think they can beat the Saints because they have experience doing it. But it all depends on the matchup with Jared Goff. That's really what it's going to come down to. I don't want to see Jared Goff against a team like the Washington football team or even the New Orleans Saints, even though I think he can beat them. Really the only matchup I don't want to see Jared Goff against is the Washington football team because I feel like that's a team he could lose to. But luckily that wouldn't happen. Luckily. Because of the way playoff seeding is now. That's why I say that. However, we're going to continue trucking along. The Bucs down 17-0 to the Atlanta Falcons. And just like we all knew, the Atlanta Falcons choked. And the thing you have to be concerned about if you're a Bucs fan is consistency. Because not even that. If the Bucs get into the playoffs and they go down 17-0 to one of these playoff teams, it's a wrap. Tom Brady ain't saving you he can save you from Matt Ryan and the sorry Atlanta Falcons, or Dan Bailey missing 4 field goals against the Minnesota Vikings, but he's not going to be able to save you down 17 to the Packers or the Seahawks or the Saints or even the Rams. You already lost to that team. I just don't believe that. I don't. So the Bucs got to get that rectified. And then as far as their defense is concerned, their secondary, I'm just so disappointed. I like the Bucs secondary. It's still young, but Todd Bowles, he overexposes these guys. His blitzing and whatnot, it hangs the defensive backs out to dry, and they can't hold up in man coverage. They just can't. Once you get to the back for the defense, it's a wrap. And when you start blitzing dudes left and right, over dudes' heads, and Todd Bowles, he's got to find a happy medium. And me and IT talked about this. Todd Bowles has to find a happy medium between blitzing and playing coverage. But he doesn't do that, and he exposes his defense too much, and that's when they can be had. That is exactly the moment they can be had. So that's what I'm worried about. The Bucs' consistency across the board as far as offense. Like I said, everyone keeps saying they need to run the ball more. The Bucs are built to throw the football. That is Bruce Arians' offense. The only time, and me and Toby talked about this last week, the only time Bruce Arians has ever had a major running back contribute is David Johnson, and that was when he was a Pro Bowler. Other than that, Bruce Arians is a throw it down the field guy. His offense is a pass first offense. The Bucs, no matter what you say, no matter how well they run the football, they are not built to run the football. They're just not. I'm sorry. With Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate, Scotty Miller, they're not built to run the football. They are built to throw it. But they can't overcome Tom Brady's mistakes, that's for sure. And they can't overcome slow starts. So there's that. And then you get to the Cardinals. My problem with the Cardinals is they're too offensively reliant on Kyler Murray. And what do I mean by that? Their entire offense is predicated on his legs. Kyler Murray is the reason the Cardinals are such a prolific rushing team. He is the reason. It's like I've been saying. You can put an average back behind the Cardinals offensive line and he'll be good because Kyler Murray is such a threat to run the football. But the thing is, teams have been making the adjustment of making Kyler hand the ball off to the running back on the read option, and then they've been putting a spy on Kyler Murray in the passing game. And that's pretty much solved the Cardinals offense. And Kyler Murray has to throw it from the pocket, and he's a good thrower from the pocket, but he's not polished yet. He's not polished just yet. So I think there's that. I do like the Cardinals' defense and the multitude of blitzes they throw at you, the exoticness, the hybridness of their defense. I like Vance Joseph as a defensive coordinator. However, their pass rush, if they had Chandler Jones, I feel a lot better about this team. Not only just his leadership, but obviously his production as a sack artist. But they don't have him. So there's that. But I just think the Cardinals, they're a year away as far as experience. Them and the Miami Dolphins, I just think they're a year away. They have all the ingredients for the most part. Dolphins need a receiver and an offensive line. Kyler, he just needs some experience, so getting to the playoffs will do a lot of good for him. But I just think they're a year away. That's just my opinion. Kind of transitioning into the Cardinals game, the Eagles. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. This should be fun. My thoughts on the Hurts performance. I thought it was a pretty good performance. I was impressed. 24-44, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Also had an additional rushing touchdown, and he rushed 11 times for 63 yards. A lot more modest rushing in this game. It wasn't, designed runs and scrambles, really. A lot of it was improvisation, so that was nice to see. But I will say this. I'm not completely sold yet. It's probably going to take me a while to be completely sold, to be honest with you. Now, Jalen Hurts so far, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, 647 yards throwing. But he's only completing 55% of his passes. That's not selling me. I'm sorry. That's not selling me. I was impressed with how he came back down 16-0 and made this a game. I also was impressed by the fact that he had 7 completions of 20 plus yards. That was very, very impressive. So it appears the Eagles know how to do something as far as offense is concerned without Carson Wentz. They're obviously getting Jalen Reagor more involved. Alshon drew some ticky-tack offense or defensive pass interference calls on Patrick Peterson all day. Quez Watkins had a good 30-yard or 32-yard touchdown off a screen pass. You saw his speed. Zach Ertz had a few deep catches. Dallas Goedert looked good. But overall, I need to see more from Jalen Hurts. I need the Eagles to take the reins off a little bit more. I was impressed with what I saw throwing, but like I said, completing 54% of your passes, that does not wow me at all. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. Also, as far as taking the handcuffs off him a little bit, he's only reading half the field and then running, obviously. Then you look at, they're not really throwing any passes over the middle of the field with Jalen Hurts, obviously trying to prevent him from throwing interceptions or throwing into tight windows. So I understand that, but I want to see what he can do. Ultimately, I don't think you can decide if he's the franchise quarterback off of 4 games, although I think the Eagles will. Because then you have to manage the report of Carson Wentz requesting, not even requesting, but the report came out from Adam Schefter that Carson Wentz doesn't want to be a backup, and that if Jalen Hurts remains the starter, he wants to be traded, essentially. And this is the thing. National media and the Philadelphia Eagles fans, they've been bamboozled by this man, Howie Roseman, once again. People have been fooled by this guy. It's funny how people fall into this trap. They fall into it so easily. And Howie Roseman just manipulates it so well. Because let's just think about this for a second. Because you had a bunch of national media people on Monday calling Carson Wentz selfish, calling him soft, saying he's not a team guy, he's not tough. Well, if Carson Wentz is soft, then if he was soft, why isn't he and people call him injury prone, right? He's been sacked 50 times. If he was injury prone, he would have been hurt by now, number one. Number two, you're calling him soft. He threw a touchdown pass on a torn ACL. So there's no way in hell that he's soft. So let's just get that out of there right now. Number two, we're talking about Carson Wentz being selfish. How is he being selfish? By saying he doesn't want to be a backup? Wouldn't any competitor not want to be a backup? They want to start, especially if you're getting paid over $100 million. Why would you want to be a backup? That makes no sense. But literally, we see Carson Wentz patting Jalen Hurts, showing him stuff on the tablet. Oh, he's not a team guy. People are just character assassinating this guy, and I just don't get it. Like, what has he ever done wrong? But people, I guess, they've been waiting for this moment. They've been waiting for this man to crash and burn. So now they're just raining on his parade. You got people anointing Jalen Hurts the savior and saying that he's Philadelphia tough. People who aren't even from Philadelphia talking about he's Philadelphia tough. Don't go talking about a city you've never been to, bro. Don't go doing that. I ain't gonna say no names, but don't go talking about a city you've never been to or never played for. Don't go doing that. You don't know what you're talking about. But transitioning back, people have been bamboozled by Howie Roseman. They've been bamboozled. Let's just think about this. Why would Carson Wentz leak something like that? What benefit does he gain? Teams already know that he's playing bad. Teams already know that they're most likely going to call the Philadelphia Eagles to see about trading for him because Jalen Hurts is the starter right now. Teams already know that Carson Wentz isn't a backup quarterback. And the Eagles have a quarterback controversy on their hands as we speak. So why would Carson Wentz leak that information when that's already known information? What most likely happened is this. Carson Wentz's agent called the GM, let him know that his client is not interested in being a backup. So if they decide to go with Jalen Hurts, then you should probably trade him. Now, what Howie Roseman did, being smart and knowing that people weren't going to catch on to this as well, what he did was leak that information to Adam Schefter on Sunday before the game, right when national media is going to be covering pre-games of teams that morning. He leaks the information. Adam Schefter tells it. Now, instead of the onus, because also another report came out earlier last week. You got to connect the dots now. A report earlier came out last week that made a lot of Eagles fans mad, was that Jeffrey Lurie hasn't even thought about firing Howie Roseman, the GM. And so now to take the heat off of Howie Roseman's behind, he puts it back on Carson. And now guess what teams are talking about instead once Howie Roseman leaks that information to Adam Schefter and the national media. Now what are people talking about? No one's talking about how bad the Philadelphia Eagles are. No one's talking about the poorest job that Howie Roseman is doing as a GM. Now everyone's talking about Carson Wentz being selfish. Everyone's talking about him wanting to be traded. You got people running headlines about him being soft. Now the heat is off of Howie Roseman and it's on Carson Wentz. So Howie Roseman did a brilliant job absolving himself from any culpability that was on him for a brief moment. And he put it all on Carson Wentz, which is what Howie Roseman does because he's a weasel, which is why I don't trust him with Jalen Hurts at all. And you have a former person who used to work for the Philadelphia Eagles in the article that I referenced in my other episode that is already out. So go listen to that on the Philadelphia Eagles and their power structure going on right now. But you have one dude in the article who says Jeffrey Lurie looks at Howie Roseman as a messiah. I mean, what is this guy, baby Jesus? What? This is not good. This organization. Why would anyone trust this organization with Jalen Hurts? That's just all I'm curious about. They've done a disservice and they've done malpractice. This organization has done malpractice for Carson Wentz. And you think they're going to do what exactly with Jalen Hurts? What do you think they're going to do? I just don't get what people don't understand about this. The Eagles literally mismanaged Carson Wentz, surrounding him with no talent, no receivers, drafted a quarterback in the second round, backstabbed him after paying him over $100 million. What makes you think they wouldn't do the same thing to Jalen Hurts? And I detailed it before. Howie Roseman, he has no football background, no sports background. He's a guy from law school. So the way he views things is A to B. He doesn't think about the process in between, the lead up, the potential ramifications. All he thinks is just like he said. Well, a second round quarterback, a rookie quarterback, isn't going to put pressure on a Pro Bowl caliber player like Carson Wentz, an MVP caliber player. Yeah, no, duh. Maybe not in a vacuum, but when you think about the fact that Carson Wentz is in the shadow of Nick Foles as far as winning the Super Bowl and a statue being outside the stadium, yeah, that actually does play a toll on you mentally. But Howie Roseman doesn't think about that. He doesn't think about the locker room dynamics and the message that sends to the locker room as far as, oh, we anoint this guy the guy. We let go of players like Malcolm Jenkins so we can anoint Carson Wentz the leader. He leads the team to the playoffs with a bunch of practice squad guys and wins over the locker room. And now you go behind his back and backstab him and take a quarterback in the second round. You guys don't think that same Howie Roseman won't do that to Jalen Hurts? You guys don't think the same Doug Peterson that people were saying, Carson Wentz's 2017 is an anomaly. Well, that means Doug Peterson and the Philadelphia Eagles, who claim to be a quote unquote quarterback factory, have never developed Carson Wentz. So what makes you think they can develop Jalen Hurts? I mean, people don't think about these things. They've been bamboozled and fooled by Howie Roseman. They've been fooled. They've been manipulated into thinking that Carson Wentz is the scapegoat. So now all the pressure is off of everyone else, and it's all solely focused on Carson Wentz. Everyone's been manipulated. They've all been manipulated by Howie Roseman. They've all been manipulated because Carson Wentz has been the scapegoat of this entire operation. And now no one's even focused on the fact that the receivers are still not good. No one's focused on the fact that the offensive line isn't good. No one's talking about the fact that Jalen Hurts got sacked 6 times. No one's talking about it. No one's talking about the defense could have potentially given up 40, 50 points, but they got 2 red zone turnovers that were lucky. No one's talking about that stuff. Your corner position is beyond suspect. Your safety position is terrible. Your linebacking core is the worst in the league. Your D-line, they're performing up to snuff so far. But overall, this roster is bad. And now you know what people are going to do? They're going to give Howie Roseman credit. They're going to give him credit for finding Jalen Hurts and drafting him when he created a dysfunctional situation. Howie Roseman is actually going to be given credit by people in the fan base. People in the fan base. Because he's manipulated them. And they don't have the hindsight to think. They don't have the hindsight to think about the ramifications of all these things. It's just an A to B thing. But that's not how football works. People are actually going to give Howie Roseman credit for, quote unquote, foreseeing the downfall of Carson Wentz. But in that, how can you foresee? So in that, let's break that down a little bit. So you pay the quarterback over $100 million. You do nothing to surround him with help. You draft the quarterback in the second round and you foresaw your quarterback falling off the face of the map and having the worst year ever as far as his career. And now what you also foresaw was your cap situation being one of the second worst in the league next year. And now you potentially have to take a $34 million cap hit to get rid of said $100 million quarterback. That's foresight to you? That's not foresight. That's idiocy. That's lunacy. That's malpractice. And this is what I mean when they're a dysfunctional franchise. Because functional franchises don't do this. You don't see the Bills doing this, the Kansas City Chiefs doing this, the New Orleans Saints, the Green Bay Packers. You don't see any of these teams doing this type of stuff. Now, if Carson Wentz was old or something, or you didn't sign into a contract extension, maybe sure. But you done told us that this is the guy, and then you went and drafted a potential replacement in the second round. And then you make idiotic statements about quarterback factories and, Carson Wentz, he's not going to be looking over his shoulder because that's a rookie. No, you obviously didn't learn anything from what happened with Nick Foles. You obviously didn't learn anything. And you're in the building every day. I'm a fan in Florida, hundreds of thousands of miles away, and I can see this stuff clear as day, but you can't? I mean, what are we talking about here? These dudes, they bamboozled the fan base. They've literally manipulated the fan base into thinking that they have not committed malpractice, that they have not committed, that they haven't introduced and invited controversy into a situation that they didn't have to. That's what dysfunctional franchises do. They invite dysfunction into a situation where there is none. And I just want to be wary of this because I continuously say it. If the Eagles get rid of Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts is not the answer, what are you going to do then? That's the $1 million question to me. Because I'm not sold on Jalen Hurts. He's playing well, but completing 55% of your passes, that doesn't wow me. He threw for 300 yards. Yeah, I give him credit. He had a good game against the Cardinals. I'm not taking that away. The previous week against the Saints, I thought he had an okay game. But completing 55% of your passes is not going to get it done in this league, not in a passing league. That's not franchise quarterback stuff. No. But granted, he's only a rookie, so he has time to develop. But I'm just saying that's not something that can continue going forward. But like I said, I don't even trust the Eagles with his development because I believe they'll backstab him at some point. That's just my opinion. If they did it to Carson Wentz, who was the number 2 overall pick, why wouldn't they do it to a dude that was in the second round? That's not as highly regarded. That's just my opinion. But if someone feels differently, I have no quarrels with them. Getting to the last portion of this, my fan question. Fan question for today is Robert Saleh an unqualified defensive coordinator since he's been working with a D-line that's full of first-round picks? No. No, he's not an unqualified defensive coordinator. This defense is a top 5 defense. They've given up 30 to the top teams. They've given up 30 to some of the top offenses in the league, Seattle, Buffalo, and Green Bay. They gave up 41 to the Dallas Cowboys, but that was mainly because their offense turned the ball over 3 times. And then the special teams gave up a touchdown. So that's 28 points right there. That's 28 of the 41 right there. And then you're looking at the injuries on the defense. Bosa and D Ford are not playing. They traded DeForest Buckner. Richard Sherman missed a large amount of time. Jimmy Ward. So, no, he's not an invalid defeat. He's not an unqualified defensive coordinator. He's one of the top candidates for a head coaching job. And he should be. I like his defense. I like the way he runs his defense. He's not just a static cover 3 guy. He also runs some quarters coverage, is willing to play some man-to-man, is also willing to blitz. His defense is very multiple. And I respect the defensive coordinator that does that, because there's some defensive coordinators that are very static in their coverages and don't make very many adjustments and run the same 2 basic coverages and a blitz here or there. So I think Robert Saleh is I'm not going to say he's a bright defensive mind. I think someone like Brandon Staley is a bright defensive mind. And he's a little bit younger on the Rams defensive staff. But I think Robert Saleh has what it takes to be a good head coach. But I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I think he's one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. He just doesn't have very good personnel right now. So, no, I don't think he's unqualified because he's had a defense full of first-round picks. Because I've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers have 9 first-round picks, and it took them that long to just have a competent defense. So when I look at San Francisco 49ers defense, the D-line is the only thing that makes their defense go. The secondary also takes the ball away. Their linebacking core gets depth in their zone coverage responsibilities, and they're also in their run fits. You look at Richard Sherman, he's obviously having a down year, but even the Super Bowl year, he was a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber guy. Safety position, they're good there. They mix up their coverages and disguise things in the back end. So, no, I don't think he's a bad defensive coordinator. I don't think he's unqualified. I think he's very qualified. And I think a team, one of these teams that has a head coaching opportunity, I think they'll be lucky to have a defensive mind like him, honestly. Because I think he's very multiple in his looks. He disguises things. And as far as I'm concerned, he's a good defensive coordinator. Top 5. And with these key injuries, Bosa, D Ford, Richard Sherman, and Jimmy Ward, and you're still a top 5 defense with arguably some of your best players out. 2 of those dudes are on the defensive line, and 2 of those dudes are in the secondary, and you're still fielding a top 5 defense? No, give me a break. Is he unqualified? No, he's not unqualified. He's very much qualified as far as I'm concerned. But that's about all I got for you guys. If you got any more fan questions, be sure to ask them, like always. Merry Christmas. Hope you guys have a good holiday. I got, this week I had 2 episodes for you guys, so enjoy those. And until then, peace and one love. Enjoy your Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.